He had wisdom straight from God, and still wrecked his life. How does that even happen? You can be wise, wealthy, and worshipped, and still lose everything that matters. King Solomon started strong, the wisest man to ever live in fact. He built God's temple. He wrote Proverbs. He had peace, wealth, and influence. But his story ends not with glory, but with regret. Today, we're unpacking the final chapter of Solomon's life. Why did a man with everything still fall? And more importantly, what can we learn from his mistakes so we don't make the same ones? Stick around on The Word while you're at it. You might as well hit the notification bell to not miss another epic Bible story. We drop several each week. So you're about to see how spiritual drift can ruin even the greatest of callings. But before the unraveling of this mighty king, let's first rewind. Solomon steps into power after King David, his father, a young, unsure ruler. But God appears to him in a dream and says, "Ask for anything." Solomon doesn't ask for money, or revenge, or even a long life. He asks for wisdom. That moment changed everything. When God heard Solomon's heartfelt request for wisdom to lead his people well, he was deeply pleased. Not just because Solomon asked for the right thing, but because it showed true humility and devotion. So God didn't stop at granting wisdom alone. He showered Solomon with blessings that far exceeded his original request. First, God blessed Solomon with immense riches, wealth that made him the richest king in the world at that time. His treasures overflowed with gold, silver, precious stones, and exotic goods from every corner of the known world. Solomon's wealth wasn't just for show. It was a symbol of God's favor and a tool to strengthen Israel's influence and security. Second, God gave Solomon unparalleled fame and renown. People from distant lands, kings, scholars, and travelers alike, journeyed across deserts and seas just to hear Solomon speak. His wisdom was so profound that it cut through the noise of the world, offering insights into justice, morality, nature, and the mysteries of life. His reputation as a wise and just ruler became legendary, sparking admiration and respect far beyond Israel's borders. Third, God granted Solomon peace and stability during his reign, a rare and precious gift in those turbulent times. The enemies that once threatened Israel either bowed before him or stayed silent, allowing the nation to prosper without the constant threat of war. This peace gave Solomon and his people the breathing room to build, innovate, and thrive. Solomon's wisdom was not just talk, it was life-changing. He authored over 3,000 proverbs, each a gem of practical advice and spiritual truth, and composed 1,005 songs that captured the human experience in all its depth and beauty. His writings became a vast treasury of knowledge, like a living, breathing library of wisdom that generations would study and cherish. One of Solomon's crowning achievements was the magnificent temple he built for God in Jerusalem. This wasn't just a building. It was a breathtaking marvel of architecture and devotion, a spiritual center that embodied the glory and presence of God among his people. The temple became a beacon of faith and unity, drawing pilgrims from near and far to honor God. Solomon honored God with all his heart, both in grand public ceremonies and in quiet private moments of prayer and reflection. His life was a testament to the blessings that flow when one seeks wisdom and walks humbly with God. Under Solomon's reign, Israel flourished like never before. The nation grew in strength, prosperity, and spiritual depth, a shining example of what happens when divine wisdom guides a leader and a people. But then, things started to shift. Here's where the story gets real. Even wise people have blind spots. And Solomon's biggest one. His heart. He loved women. And not just a few. He had 700 wives and 300 concubines. And many of these women worshipped gods like Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, known for rituals involving sexual immorality. Some bowed to Chemosh, the detestable god of Moab, and others to Molech, whose worship included child sacrifice. God wasn't being picky when he told Israel not to intermarry with these nations. He was protecting their souls. But Solomon didn't listen. He didn't just marry these women, he allowed their beliefs into his home, his city, and eventually his heart. He even built shrines for their gods. Picture that, the same man who built the Lord's temple is now financing altars for idols. Solomon didn't fall overnight. His decline was gradual, almost imperceptible at first. It started with one small compromise, seemingly harmless. Then another, each one chipping away at his devotion bit by bit. Eventually, there was silence, no protest, no resistance, just quiet acceptance. And finally, spiritual numbness set in, like a slow drift into darkness. Does that sound familiar? This is where so many of us find ourselves. We begin with passion, burning love for God, earnest service, heartfelt prayer. We're on fire, full of hope and purpose. But then life happens. The whirlwind of busyness sweeps us away. Distractions pile up. Relationships grow complicated, money pressures mount. Comfort becomes a subtle rival. All these things are good in themselves, blessings, even. But when they start to quietly edge God out of first place in our hearts, that's when trouble begins. Maybe it's not blatant idolatry or obvious false gods. Maybe it's the seemingly innocent habits that steal our time and attention, late night scrolling that numbs our spirit, careers we silently worship, or toxic relationships we justify and tolerate. It's a slow, creeping drift that dims the light of our faith until we barely recognize the person we once were, the person who sought God first, above all else. Solomon didn't wake up one day and decide to betray God. He drifted, and that's what makes it so dangerous. God appeared to Solomon not once, but twice. Twice. Each time, he laid it out straight. If you turn away from me and chase after other gods, there will be serious consequences. A clear warning, loud and unmistakable. But Solomon, he chose to ignore it. Slowly, God began to raise up adversaries against him, powerful foes like Hadad the Edomite and Rezin of Damascus. What had once been peace started to unravel. The kingdom's borders, once secure, now trembled under growing tension. Enemies emerged where none had been before. And then came the hardest blow of all, the divine declaration that shook Solomon to his core. Because of your heart's attitude and your failure to keep my covenant, I will tear the kingdom away from you. No sugarcoating. No second chances. The price for turning away was high, and the consequences unavoidable. This wasn't just politics or war, it was the breaking of a sacred promise, and the beginning of a kingdom's unraveling. The verdict was final. The kingdom would be torn in two. Only one tribe, Judah, would remain under Solomon's bloodline. The rest, stripped away and handed to someone else. This wasn't just a political shift, it was the shattering of a legacy. A dynasty built by David, blessed by God, now fractured because the son who had everything let compromise take the throne of his heart. Solomon didn't just lose influence, he lost the future he was meant to secure. And that's the real tragedy. He had wisdom, but lacked obedience. He could discern truth, write proverbs, judge with insight. But in the end, he didn't live what he knew. Knowledge without surrender. Brilliance without loyalty. And the kingdom paid the price. So here's the big question. How does a person filled with God's wisdom fall this far? If Solomon could slip, what does that mean for us? A lot of people watching this are trying to follow God but feel stuck. Maybe you've lost the fire you once had. Maybe you've been compromising. Or maybe, deep down, you're scared that you'll never finish strong. So let's talk about it. Solomon knew what was right. He literally wrote what was right. But knowledge without action is powerless. You can go to church, know scripture, say all the right things, and still be drifting if your heart's not right. Wisdom helps you see the path, but only obedience walks it. Solomon didn't start by building altars to Molech. He started by marrying one woman from a forbidden nation. Just one small crack in the foundation. That's how the enemy works. Subtle, gradual, undetected. Jesus said in Luke chapter 16 verse 10, "Whoever is faithful in very little will also be faithful in much." That's not just a proverb, it's a principle for life. Small obedience matters. The quiet, yes, when no one's watching. The hard, no, when compromise is easier. It's those daily, unseen choices that shape who you're becoming. Because character isn't built in big moments, it's revealed by them. Solomon was gifted. He was anointed. He was called by God himself. But here's the sobering truth. Gifts don't shield you from a downfall. Talent can impress people, but it can't fool God. There's a dangerous lie out there that whispers, if God called me, he'll cover me, no matter how I live. But calling without character, that's not a covering, it's a setup for collapse. Solomon's story teaches us this: you can be chosen and still fall. You can have divine wisdom and still make disastrous decisions. if you neglect the daily discipline of staying close to God. Because in the end, it's not just about what you're gifted to do, it's about who you're becoming when no one's looking. God's favor doesn't cancel out personal responsibility. You can't ride your gift into heaven. You have to walk in surrender. When God warns us, it's not to shame us, it's to save us. Solomon was warned twice. That's God being patient. Think about your own life. Have you been ignoring red flags? Brushing off that conviction, telling yourself, I'll deal with it later? God warns because He loves. But if we keep ignoring Him, we will reap what we sow. Here's something powerful. The book of Ecclesiastes, which many scholars believe Solomon wrote later in life, feels like a confession. He says things like, everything is meaningless. I denied myself nothing. I hated life. It sounds bleak, but really, it's a man waking up from a long spiritual fog. He had tried everything, pleasure, projects, wealth, learning, and found it all empty without God. And then he ends the book with this: fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. It's like Solomon realized, I had it all, but without God, it meant nothing. That's redemption, that's grace. Even after everything, Solomon found his way back to truth. So can you? Picture this, a man with unlimited wisdom. Kingdoms at his feet, gold stacked like bricks. A temple he built for the living God. And in the end, he stands empty, regretful, looking back. Why? Because he forgot that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, not the end. You don't outgrow God. You don't get too wise to depend on Him. When you stop listening, stop obeying, stop repenting, that's when everything crumbles. Solomon didn't need more knowledge. He needed a humble heart. So what about you? Are there areas where you've gotten lazy spiritually? Have you started to justify compromises? Are you drifting? The good news: you can return, right now. Don't wait until regret becomes your only teacher. Solomon's final chapter isn't just a tragedy. It's a warning and a wake-up call. No one is too wise, too gifted, or too experienced to fall away. But no one is too far gone to return, either. Don't settle for knowing God. Walk with Him, daily, obediently, humbly. That's how you finish strong. Want to know what happened to the man who wrestled God and lived? Tap the next video to see how Jacob's fight turned into a blessing that changed everything.